It is no secret to the world that life nowadays is completely different to how it was 25 years ago. Back then, you wouldn't pay no more than $60,000 for a nice house. You wouldn't pay more than a few $1,000s for a good car. And you can work one job and you can become a single provider and not have to worry much about anything. That was the norm. That was the norm back then. That was the American dream. But nowadays, it's completely crushed. And I think a lot of men understand that nowadays things are stacked up against them. There's this one stupid trend that's going on that's called the male loneliness epidemic. That essentially what it is a bunch of women that have extremely high standards. I like to call it the 666 standard: 6 feet tall, six pack abs, and six figures, which is absurd to think about. That it's crazy for women to imagine that men can make this much money and have this much status at such an early age, but that's what they go for apparently. But anyways, this isn't what this video is about. This video is about an article that I actually read online that apparently men are going to church a lot more than women nowadays. Yeah, that's crazy. Let's take a look. So here we can see a study from the religion news service that new study shows how men now surpass women in church attendance in major reversal. So that's crazy to think about. This was actually released in October 7th, 2025. And here we can see well, let's start off right here actually. For the first time in 25 years, men are consistently outpacing women in church attendance. This reverses a long-standing trend from the early 2000s, when women were more regular attenders than men by a wide margin. Over the years, women's attendance steadily declined while men's remained more stable. Yeah. And I am a great example of this, right? As of 2025, I am one of those 43% of men that do attend church regularly on a weekly basis. But not only that, I did convert and seek Jesus. So I would like to know the percentage of that. Maybe I will find that out sometime. But here we see 43% of men and 36% of women report attending church regularly on a weekly basis. The largest gender gap, right? That's insane. The past 25 years. Not only that, we can also see that Gen Z and millennial men are driving much of the upward trends. Okay. In 2025, 46% of Gen Z men and 55% of millennial men have attended church in the past week, compared to 44% of Gen Z women and 38% of millennial women. So if we put that two and two together, this is... So not that this matters, but if we put this together, this is 101% and what is this, 82%, I think. So that's a big difference in percentages. Not that these percentages combined matter, but the fact that there's a 20 percentage difference if you add these both up, it just shows that overall that a lot of younger men are seeking God, are seeking the church, are seeking the gospel, are seeking Jesus Christ. So as we read more and more about this, it says overall younger adults, including men and women, are now the most regular churchgoers, surpassing older generations. So yeah, that proves my point where, a lot of men nowadays, I'm sure a lot of women as well, are seeking Christ, right? I'd read I was looking through an article where it said that there has been a big increase in Christianity within the last few years because of Gen Z, where they thought they could take on the world without any guidance, and they all turned to Christ, which is something that I love to see, because nowadays the way that the world is going, it's not easy to necessarily know exactly what you want to do and what you want to pursue, because there's just so much involved now. Back then, the typical dream was to get married at a young age, to graduate university, get a house, and make kids. Nowadays, it's becoming completely unrealistic for the main fact that everything is so dang expensive now. It's hard itself to find a partner who is actually, pursuing Christ. And to find a partner, and not only that, but find some way to get a house where you're tied to a mortgage for years and years and years, it just does not make sense anymore. And that's really upsetting, because, that's something that I do want to pursue. I do want to lead my family. I do want to protect and provide. I do want to own a home. But now it's just becoming more and more unrealistic. Here we can also see that data also reveals a gap between single parents and married parents. Okay, this is interesting. When it comes to regular church attendance, Of current parents of children, kids under 18 years old, 20%, 24% of single moms and 21% of single dads attend church weekly, compared to 30% of married moms and 30% of married dads. Wow! That's insane to think about. This is such a low number. That's terrible. Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, it's no wonder things are going bad. I'd love to know you know, what the percentage is of single moms and single dads in general, just to begin with, but 24% and 21%, that's absurd. Alright, lastly, to finish off this article, it says that the nationwide random samples, 130, that sound Irish there, 132,000 adults conducted over 25 years. That's okay, ending in July. Yeah, so that just goes to show that a lot more people nowadays are turning to Christ, especially men. The fact that Gen Z men, where is it at? 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 This right here. Over the years, women's attendance steadily declined while men's remained more stable. That is absurd. As of 2025, 42% and 36%. Yeah, so talk about an article that has a lot of meaning, a lot of perspective, and a lot of depth. That's something that's is scary to think about that nowadays because the world has become so rotten that a lot of women are leaving churches. They're doing these feminist things where they think they can, become independent whenever they're actually living a normal life. And they have their standards set so high that I can't see a way back from this where the American norm can become normal again. With not with inflation, not with families getting torn apart, not with families leaving churches, not with people not believing in the gospel anymore, not with people becoming atheists and agnostic. I find it crazy to believe that this planet is going in the complete wrong direction. And I praise a lot of the men that still go to church and don't drink, don't smoke, do all the right things. And it sometimes does feel like it's not rewarding. I get that. But I do believe that God does have a plan for the people that he does good in. There's this one quote that I love to live by is that God gives his hardest battles to his greatest warriors. And that's something that I truly, truly live by. That's something that I try to remember whenever things go bad. And you're not alone, right? You're not alone. We all have to go through this. We all have to suck up the bad times. And sometimes it feels like, yeah, things do get lonely, right? Yes, God is the Holy Spirit. You can feel his Holy Spirit presence. But sometimes you just want a physical presence, a human. A lot of us nowadays want that norm where we can start that family, live to raise our kids and show them the great principles that we had to learn and go through. The ones that our parents taught us, the ones that we developed as time went on, the ones that we learned while we were reading the Bible, things like that. And I understand that a lot of men nowadays do feel lost and do feel hopeless that they won't find that partner. But I do hope that, things can look up for all of us, especially the ones who go to church and pray for good things to happen, where they pray many, many times a day and want good things to come to them. Yes, that may not be promised, and it might take a very, very long time if it does happen. But, I mean, there was an older couple that I was chatting with at church a few days ago, and even they said that they got married at 20 years old. Their siblings got married right out of high school. There was no cheating. There was no dating someone from across the world. It was all local. It was all built on trust and who you knew. And nowadays, I see many, 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 many relationships where they take place on the different sides of the country, where one person is on the East Coast and one is on the West. I'm not saying that would never work, but I'm saying that's not how it was back then. But yeah, that's something that I did want to touch on about, so the fact that a lot more men are going to church and giving themselves to God, which I do love to hear. And I pray that the decline that's going on for women that are leaving church just does a 180 and becomes an incline, because there's a saying that I had heard many, many times where if you find a partner that isn't a believer and you are a believer, it's extremely unlikely that they're able to convert and get saved by Christ. Not saying that it isn't possible. I'm saying that's just unlikely. But yes, that's what I wanted to touch on in today's video. I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll speak to you all soon. Take care.